All right, we are live for the 57th episode of the
Let's Go podcast. We are back. At least for me, personally, growing up listening to WFAN sports radio my whole childhood, I remember vividly by the radiator in my room listening to Boomer and Carton growing up, and really obsessed with all of WFAN. We had the pleasure of having Evan Roberts on a few months back, and now we are beyond, joyful and thankful that superstar Sal Licata agreed agreed to come on, and we can't wait to hear from Sal. So, Dave, you could take it away.
Well, we'll take it away right away by saying there was late breaking news this morning. I didn't have a chance to listen to Sal and Brandon, but this morning on Sid Rosenberg, he announced that Sal Licata is the number one mid morning host in WFAN history. And that makes having you on all the more exciting. Do you know about this?
No, somebody texted me saying that Sid mentioned me during his show today. I'd love to hear it. Sid and I go way back to when I first started here as an intern. Then whatever, worked my way up, and we became friendly. This is 2003, 2004. So I've known him for 20 years. We've been in contact. I was texting him last week, just joking around about something, but I didn't hear what he said. I would love to hear it, especially if it was positive. I'd love to hear that from Sid.
So, well, my understanding of it actually it was sort of positive. The way it was reported to me by one of we have a small but devoted listener base over here. So the way it was reported to me was that Sal Licata sent Sid Rosenberg the all-time rankings, and Sal Licata was number one on the mid-morning show. And then Sid actually got the number 2 and the number 3 spot because he had two different host partners over time. So he was able to get in on 2 spots. So he didn't argue with the rankings. So I would say it was positive on that front. But he said that you were the curator of the list.
Yeah, I sent him a text because we were just thinking about him. BT and I were thinking about. Oh, actually, I was thinking about him because of college football. Sid and I used to bet college football together years ago. So we're talking about college football, and it made me start thinking about Sid. And then I started talking about him to BT during the break. So I figured a way to mess around with Sid is to send him those rankings, saying number three midday show in fan history was Jody and Sid. Number 2 was Joe and Sid. Number 1, BT and Sal.
I forgot about Sid being with her. Okay, with him, Jody McDonald, Jody Mack.
Yeah, Sid and Jody first.
I was trying to remember. Right. Sid and Jody. Okay, that's going back a long time. I'm 37. Yeah. You're 39, right, Sal?
I'm 45.
You're 45. Well, I'll tell you this much. You've got a PR team. They wrote Superstar. Sal, it's time for you to have a Wikipedia page. And I think I might actually take it upon myself to make it because I'm a big fan of WFAN. And according to one thing that I found online, which seemed like it was written by AI, it said you were 39. So we got to get...
I was 39 6 years ago. So who knows when that was updated. But yeah, I am currently, unfortunately, 45 and moving up.
45 and moving up. Okay, so you go way back with Sid. So it was Jody and Sid, and then Joe and Sid. Okay, got it. I remember.
And for the record, just like I didn't write that Superstar Sal thing on there, I don't even know where that came from. Probably Hoff put that on there when I signed up for this Riverside account or whatever it is. For the record, that wasn't my official midday rankings. I was just messing around with Sid. So.
Well, you're in good company.
I think we figured that much. It's just good. It's just
making sure everybody knows I wasn't being serious when I said that.
Well, you're in good company because it's sort of like Carton had like the Pulse of the People Award, and he won it 7 years in a row magically. I don't know.
If we brought that up when we had Evan on, and he got a good kick out of it. It's funny because when to listeners, like me, I listen all the time. Like I actually bought into that stuff. Like it's great entertainment. I mean, obviously,
right.
Winning 7 years obviously is something up with Craig and the Pulse of the People, but it's great. It's great stuff. I love it.
Well, that's why Craig is great at what he does. He is a great entertainer. Would you say he's a great sports talk show host the way that Mike and Chris were? Maybe not, but he was an entertainer and coming up with those entertaining crazy bits like the Pulse of the People.
Yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned Mike because you consider Mike sort of a mentor to you. I saw you also do stuff with his kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because how did you get such a close relationship with him? He seems like such a tough guy to get close with. And it's interesting. And it sounded like you also have mentioned that he sort of helped your career along. Without him, you kind of owe a lot to him. So yeah. I wanted to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I started as an intern in 2003, worked my way up. So I've known Mike for a long time. And back then, my favorite show was Mike and the Mad Dog. I used to call, before I ever started working at the Fan, I would call Mike specifically and talk about I grew up rooting for the Falcons, so I would call him on a Sunday show. I'd call Mike and the Dog. But then that led to me working at the Fan and working my way up. And then for whatever reason, Mike took a liking to me, even when I was part-timer, and thought I had a good personality and potential to be on the air. So much so that he convinced then boss Mark Chernoff to give me an overnight show on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. This is back in 2006. That was the first time I ever did a show. And Mike, I think, expedited that opportunity. And then I started working on the Mike and the Mad Dog show as a board op. I think it was after Malusis moved up. It was like Carlin and Malusis, and they moved up. I forget the exact timeline. And then maybe Eddie Scazzeri went to the morning show, so a job opened up on the Mike and the Mad Dog show. I got that job. And then Dog left, and it was just me, Mike, and Eddie Erickson. So I was there on Mike's show when Dog first left until 2010. So, I mean, that's how. We worked together for a long time. I was on his show, and that's it. And we've stayed in touch, and I think I've been grateful for his friendship and thankful for all the opportunities that he gave me. Coming on my radio show years after on WOR, hanging out at SNY with me, coming on those shows. I've always been appreciative of the opportunities, grateful, and respectful of Mike and what he accomplished in his career.
What do you think? Do you think he sort of took you under his wing, not just because he thought you were talented, but also he saw something in you, he liked you, he reminded you of his, I don't know, nephew?
I thought he saw potential in me. So he would see it in the newsroom. And then there were times where I still have these tapes and they're great. And I wish I could put them somewhere. But the day after the Mets lost Game 7 in 2006, Mike and Chris brought me in studio for a full segment on the Fan and on the Yes Network. And that was my debut. And they were impressed with that appearance. And I think that ended up leading to me getting the opportunity to be host an overnight show. So he liked that. Then when Dog left, I was the one who did the picks with him. I did the over-unders with him. He had me do the Sal special on Football Fridays during his pick segment, which in the moment, it was still the coolest thing ever. But looking back, what a freaking honor that was that Mike Francesa, arguably the greatest to ever do it, in a very prominent, important spot on his show on those pick segments, would allow me to join him after Dog left. So, yeah, he believed in me. I think he liked me personally, but he believed in me on the air. I think he believed in my.
So that segment in 2006, the game ends at midnight, whatever it is, and it's the next day they have you on for that segment?
The Mets lost Game 7 in 2006. The next day, I was
So did you prepare for it?
No, because do I need to? It's watching the game. No, but so what happened was, and they would do that on occasion, bring certain people in, but it was the next day at the Fan. I was there in my Mets Cliff Floyd jersey, my Mets hat. Everybody was somber because they lost. We couldn't believe that they were actually eliminated. I was getting ready to produce Steve Summers that night. That was my job at the time. I was full-time producer.
The schmoozer.
Schmooze.
And while I was there in the newsroom during the Mike and Chris show, they brought me in.
Okay, and then you just freestyled it.
Yeah, they would ask me questions. What was the issue? I remember going at David Wright, saying that David Wright was the golden boy and he should take some blame. But, it was a full segment, so we were just talking Mets and how devastating it was and what I had issues with. It was great.
Completely brutal. So you're a long-suffering Mets fan, but also a Falcons fan, you said. How did that happen? Where did you grow up?
My grandfather used to watch the Braves when they were free and good in the early 90s. So I would then watch the Braves with him. And Dion was a big thing, and Dion was a Brave and a Falcon. Then I had the Falcon starter jacket as a kid in junior high, and that kind of was your identity. And I just it snowballed from there. But to be honest with you, while I am a Falcon fan and grew up a Falcons fan, at this particular point in my life, I don't care. I'm much more into both the Jets and the.
Where did you grow up?
Oh, Long Island.
Okay, and then you got that internship when you were 22, I guess. You said it was 2003.
So I was born in '79, and I got the internship in January of 2003. So you could do the math there.
24. So did you go to broadcasting school or anything?
I did. I went to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I went to a community college, Suffolk Community College on Long Island for a couple of years, but it just wasn't my thing. I was working at Home Depot full time, and I kept hearing Connecticut School of Broadcasting on the Fan. They used to play those commercials back then on the radio at the Fan, and I went.
Yeah, I remember
and,
those commercials very well.
Yeah, so I went. I met Bob Husler, who was an instructor. I got an
Legend.
internship through him, and that's it. The rest is history.
Oh, I didn't know that. Bob Husler was a instructor at Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Okay, I
Yes.
don't know if that was ever made clear to me from always hearing Mike and Chris tease him, Mr. Met, that
Yeah.
whole bit. Oh, so that's very interesting. So where on Long Island did you grow up?
Ronkonkoma on Long Island.
Okay, got it. One of the reasons I'm asking is because the way this podcast started is Avi and I run a bunch of recreational sports leagues in Queens and much more east on Long Island, like the Five Towns area. We have a lot of Orthodox Jews in our sports leagues, and we started a podcast kind of just to talk about the goings on with our basketball and our softball, and we also have youth leagues now. And then we started trying to have on and people, it was really Avi's idea, and people in our leagues became devoted listeners, and then we started trying to have on other guests too. And we actually ran into Evan Roberts. He has his hardball league. We were doing our softball league, and we ran into him, and we invited him on, and that was a lot of fun. And then Donnie Rosenfeld just let our audience know, Donnie plays on Addictive Ad softball team. He heard on Sal's show that he's going to be at the Jets game, and he mentioned the same section. So Donnie goes over to Sal, and Sal, being not just a superstar but also a mensch, says, "Sure, I'll come on." And it's been pretty interesting to me and Avi that WFAN, like I said to you in my email, it's almost synonymous with New York sports. And the hosts, not Mike. I don't know about Mike. You can let us know, but pretty humble and down to earth.
Yeah, and I think, I don't want to speak for Mike. He could speak for himself.
Yeah,
but
you're going to get him. Are you going to? That means you're going to get him on for us.
No, good luck with that. You're on your own. You got me. That's all I could do for you. I can't get Mike on. But I do think that Mike's personality on the air is different from. I don't want to say it's different because he's the same person, but I just don't think that people really understand the true Mike. Whereas Mike was very generous, very gracious, certainly with money, but also with opportunity. Okay, could he be tough at times and kind of, I always said Mike ran his radio show the way that Bill Parcells would run his football team. He expected the most of us. He didn't want to messing around or screwing around, or you want to pay attention, be locked in. It was important. And I think that's a great thing. But I get that some listeners say, and look, some listeners say the same thing to me. You're yellow callers, you're nasty. But I'm like, I'm really not.
Yeah.
I'm a nice guy. But I can see how sometimes a
So I'll tell
listener
you, Sal, I put out on my social media, we're having Sal Licata on our podcast tomorrow. Any questions? And like 3 people said, how did he fill Mike Francesa's shoes as the mean guy?
Well, that's what I mean. So I think that some of that can get misunderstood. Now, I can't speak for Mike, but I know that deep down in his heart, he's not a bad person. And we're only talking sports. So from my perspective, same thing. Like, do I go nuts sometimes and yell at a caller? Maybe, sure, of course. It's definitely happened before. I think it could be entertaining. It's also in the context of a show, and not in real life would we be having those type of passionate conversations. But for me, those are things that I also understand can be taken in a negative way. So I'm aware of that and try to work on myself and those things. I just want to make it about the sports and not make it personal. Even if we disagree, we could yell at each other and disagree, but it should always be about the sports, nothing personal.
So I was actually curious, on that, you were speaking earlier with Craig and how Craig's an amazing entertainer and everything he does pulls to the people. So like when I'm listening to the fan all the time and, I hear you get into it and, BT get into it and you guys are really intense, really passionate. And sometimes, callers and listeners could argue too over the top and too passionate. How much of that is genuine passion for the sport and how much of that is maybe you want to attract the crowd and help build the ratings? So I was always curious just from an outside perspective, like is that total genuine reaction or is that maybe a little bit extra just for the
I think it's a great question. The way that I would answer is that I myself, it's one of the things that drives me nuts about social media and interactions. The one thing that really bothers me is when somebody says that it's fake outrage or you're forcing it, hot takes just for the show. That is bullshit. I don't do that. Other people in the media do. I don't do that. I am a passionate. Now, like, am I going to lose sleep the way that I would in my teens or in my 20s if the Jets or Giants or the Mets or Knicks don't win? No, it's not the same as it was when I was 15 or 20 or 25. I'm an adult with real life issues that are things that you really get upset about. However, I do care about sports, and I care about right and wrong within a sports franchise or within a sports team. It drives me nuts when head coaches don't know what they're doing, or when general managers bring in bad players, or players don't do their jobs or what they're supposed to do. So the only way I can answer that is nothing I do is fake. Do sometimes you turn it up another notch of entertainment? I mean, I guess you're on the radio, you're trying to be entertaining. Maybe you have some more fun with certain things, but the passion is real. The care is real. All of it is like, I don't come up with fake takes or, let me say this because it's going to get a reaction. No, I just give my natural opinion and strong take, and you hope that it generates a reaction.
So you clearly do bring a lot of passion, and I think a lot of people really do resonate with it. And when I put it out, I was surprised a lot of people had things to say about you. One question that I got from a number of people that they wanted to know, and I don't know if this is something you could talk about. When I posted it, somebody wrote, "Superstar Sal, the comeback kid. What happened when he left WFAN?"
Well, a lot. I mean, there's a lot that happened there. And I've gone over this plenty of times, so I don't mind discussing it again. But in 2010, I got fired from WFAN for something. I'm not going to say it was so minuscule that it wasn't a big deal. It was a big deal at the time, but it was an innocent mistake that just happened to pay the ultimate price. If I go into the details, you wouldn't even really understand it. Or if I did, you'd be like, oh, that's it. And it wasn't that big of a deal. But there was a miscommunication between me and a sponsor. And I understood the decision that WFAN made, even though Mike tried to save my job and even Chernoff tried to save my job. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not only did it humble me in certain ways, it also made me realize that I am not something special because of where I work. Where I think at the time I was young and had the mindset like I've always wanted to be at the Fan, and now I feel like I've lived my lifelong dream and I'm cool because I'm at the Fan. What you do in your life is not who you are in life, and it made me mature. It also gave me other opportunity to go to SNY, and I've been there ever since. The day I got fired in 2010 was like 2 weeks before I got my first opportunity at SNY. And I've been in SNY ever since, 15 years. Then I got an opportunity to do some radio at WOR. Then I got back to the Fan. And then I left the Fan, and then I came back again. So it's been a long journey, but the best thing that ever happened to me was getting fired, because it taught me more than just work lessons. It taught me life lessons that I have since applied in every facet of my life and jobs, and I think I'm better because of it.
It's an amazing story. So how did you re-engage with WFAN?
So I was at SNY for 3 years. Then actually Sid got me an opportunity to do shows in Florida via ISDN or whatever. I had a home setup. I was doing radio shows. I actually did radio shows on the weekend in Florida, and I did a pregame show for the Yankees. Whatever Florida station this was, 640 or something, whatever, I forget what it was. They had the Yankees broadcast. So I would do a pregame show from my apartment in Manhattan in Florida while I was doing stuff at SNY. And it was 3 years later, I reached out to Mark Chernoff, and said, hey, it's been 3 years. I've learned a lot. This is where I'm at. I'd love to come back if the opportunity was there. And he was open to it. And he brought me back. And then eventually I left after that, less than a year later, to go to WOR Radio, which then had the Mets, which I thought was a better opportunity. And then I went back again. Chernoff brought me back in 2018. Like I said, bottom line was it wasn't anything like scandalous or some big deal, or it was really more of a miscommunication, which is why obviously that they were open to bringing me back in the first place.
Got it. Very interesting, very intriguing. I understand the thing with a sponsor can obviously get really complicated because that's where everybody's bread is buttered. And
it was actually Connecticut School of Broadcasting, where I went. So it was more of a miscommunication than anything else. Like I said, it wasn't meant to be ill-intended or anything else, but they took something the wrong way, and then that was that, and I understood it and accepted it.
All right. So you mentioned the Mets, you mentioned the Yankees. Obviously, you know a lot about both. Something which Donnie, who met you, will actually appreciate. I troll Yankee. I'm 37. Like I said, I grew up in the 90s. I was kicked. My older brother was a Yankee fan, and he would kick me, piss on me. The Yankees in the 90s. I mean, if you were a Met fan in the 90s, even though we had some good teams, this was a Yankees town. And Yankees, like the Yankee fans now are so easy to troll and so sensitive. I just feel like they've lost their swagger. I couldn't even imagine provoking. They're so easy to provoke nowadays. I couldn't even imagine in the late '90s saying something that would get under a Yankee fan's skin. And now it's just so easy. And I'm wondering, have the Yankees lost their edge?
No, but I do think that this was monumental. I mean, you guys know that the impact of the Mets signing a premier free agent away from the Yankees is something that I don't think Yankee fans know how to process the emotions because
No.
it's something that they've never had to do before. They've never, ever, ever been second citizen, or at least in the last 30 something years. Before you guys were born, are you 37? So you're like 80,
Avi's a little
late.
younger. Avi's 26.
I'm 27. I'm younger. I'm 10
27.
years old.
Okay, so but from 86, and I was young then, I was 6 or 7 years old, so I never understood it the other way. Like the Mets were the premier team in town. Obviously, the Yankees have the prestige and the history, but in the mid to late 80s, this was a Mets town. So the majority of Yankee fans, and even then, I'm sure they looked at the Mets as less than because they had the Yankee history and who were these loser Mets that have only been around for 20 years at the time. But since then, since the early 90s, it's been clearly dominated by the Yankees. So you're talking about over 3 years of one sided domination by the Yankees, including a head to head Subway Series victory. So I think the majority of Yankee fans right now are still trying to process that the Mets are finally back at a premier level. Now they're going to have to win, but they did get Juan Soto away from the Yankees, and I think that's something that's tough to process for Yankee
I was
fans.
actually going to say I'm a big Yankee fan. Obviously, a lot younger than both of you. Speaking for a Yankee fan myself, obviously seeing Juan Soto go to the Mets is devastating to say the least. Like you don't want to see that as a Yankee fan. You're not used to it. I'm younger, so I don't have the '90s that I remember so well. But
Mm.
even throughout my life, like the Yankees are always the big dogs in town. But I will say, as a Yankee fan speaking, the Mets always find a way to blink it up. There's always something. So, like, as a Yankee fan, yeah, granted, the Mets got Juan Soto, but it always ends up, it always ends up somewhere in the tubes. It never ends up being where, oh, they got someone and they went all the way. So, like, I guess there's also that part of, like, let's see how the Mets can mess it up this time,
Yeah.
As a little bit of a.
Fair enough. I do think it's different with Steve Cohen. It doesn't mean that it's going to result in a World Series win or multiple World Series wins. Who knows? We'll see it play out. But it was the best move that the Mets could make, and they
Yeah.
did it. And it was a big time move. It's arguably the biggest move that they've ever made in the history of their franchise. So could it go sideways? Sure. I mean, we're going to find out how the Yankees recover without him. But the Mets
I was
have more
actually
to
going to
prove.
ask you. I was actually going to ask you, Sal, on that. I saw you on SNY the other. I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I saw you got in a little bit of an argument with a couple of the hosts there on the Yankees state right now. I'm curious your take. I know that in your opinion, I think you could speak for yourself. You said the Yankees definitely are behind, especially in their lineup right now from where they were last year with Juan Soto.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. I think the Yankees are the pieces to the puzzle fit better this year than maybe they did last year. I think they've upgraded in the starting rotation clearly. The bullpen to me is all right, incremental upgrade. Like I love Max Fried for the Yankees, that's fine, but their rotation wasn't the problem last year. Their bullpen wasn't the problem last year either. So adding Williams or Cruz from Cincinnati, those should be good additions, and maybe it's a little bit better. But bullpens are so fickle. The defense should be better, yes. The lineup is not better without Juan Soto. It's not, and I think the Yankees need one more move to complete their offseason. Bregman would be the home run move for me. Get him playing good defense at third base, plus he's a good bat. I'd settle for Arenado. Maybe there are other moves that they can make that are less than that, but I think the Yankees, they cannot go into the year with DJ LeMahieu or Oswaldo Cabrera starting one of their infield positions after losing Juan Soto. To me, that wouldn't be a great offseason.
There's
Good,
a lot
not
of
great.
there's a lot of talk how Alex Bregman is a different player in Houston than he is anywhere else because of that tall wall, short wall in left field. I don't buy that. I would love for the Yankees to sign Alex Bregman. I think he's a fantastic player.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I'm sure the numbers will drop a little bit, but I just think he's the best fit. They don't need power from him. They got power from Judge, from Stanton, from Bellinger. They
Right.
need a good third baseman. Bregman's a good all-around ball player. He's a guy who's been clutch before. He could hit with some power, but he's been proven to be clutch in the postseason, and he plays great defense behind a team that's built on their pitching staff right now.
All right, so we want to be respectful of your time. Before we go, we play a little game here. It's called 5 Questions. I'm going to ask you a question, but we need your gut response. We don't want you thinking about it.
Okay.
We need the first thing that comes to your mind. All right. Other than your show, what's the best current show at WFAN?
Boomer and Gio.
Who's the nicest host at WFAN?
Currently or all time?
Currently.
Nicest? Tiki Barber.
Who knows more about sports, Mike Francesa or Chris Russo?
Come on, Mike Francesa. Love you, doggy. Yeah.
Who knows more about sports, Sal Licata or Brandon Turney?
Sal Licata. It's a no-brainer.
Is New York a baseball, football, or basketball town?
I think it's a baseball town. I've always felt that way. I feel that way even more as the years go by.
Who is the big brother, the Mets or the Yankees?
The Yankees are still the big brother. For now.
Which player in New York sports that you know personally and you cannot stand?
That I know personally?
Interviewed.
I have to give that one some thought. I don't think there is. I don't think there really is one. Remember, I don't have. I was just gonna say I don't have that many interactions with some current athletes, because usually I'm back in the shop. I don't really have anybody that I can't stand personally. Usually my issues are with them professionally, like on the field, not personally. I have no issues, nor do I really care to get to know most people personally. So I don't have a good answer for you on that one.
What does back in the shop mean?
Like at the studios. Did I say that? I'm sorry. Yeah, back in the studios. Like a lot of people that I work with, especially at SNY, are out at the games, traveling, covering the team. Where here, sorry, I just lost the lights here. I don't know what's going on. Where for me, that's not my job. I'm not covering the team, so I got to work. I'm in studio at WFAN and then again at SNY at night. So I don't really get to interact with a lot of current guys. And the ones that I do, I like. Like I've gotten to talk to Adam Ottavino, Terry Collins. I'm trying to think of some of the guys Jerry Blevins, but all these guys aren't, they're not current guys necessarily. Ottavino is, and he's a nice guy. On the field, obviously, a different story. But he's been
out of Stinko, we call him in my.
Yeah, that's not nice. But yeah, I'm trying to think of who's. If I think of a good one, I'll let you know. But I really don't have any good ones for you.
All right. Well, I'm all wrapped. Avi, anything else for Superstar Sal before we wrap here?
Yeah, I think I'm ready to wrap. I was actually curious about how again, if we're out of time, we're out of time. Quickly, how obviously when Craig left the fan, Tinky went to work with Evan, and you got the call, and you went to work with Brandon. How did that play out exactly? Was that something you knew was coming? Was there a competition? Was there a couple other?
No, I think that you're always like I was on the overnights at the time before they told me that they were going to make a change. I was looking to get a different day part. I couldn't do the overnights anymore. It was just taking a toll on me. I was frustrated with it, but with these jobs, they're very hard to get. They don't open often. So I'm pretty sure that specific morning, I had heard that, I think there were reports or rumors or whatever, that Craig might consider leaving, might have another opportunity. So I'd heard that, but nothing definitive. And then I woke up that morning, and after doing the overnight show, and my phone blew up. And one of the calls was from my boss, Spike, saying, when you get this, call us. And it was to the news of Carton leaving and all that stuff, and it was just chaos, and people were asking me what's going on. I had no idea. And then I talked to Spike and knew what was going to happen. He called me. He didn't tell me on the phone, but he said, come in. It's important. We need you to come in. And then I talked to them that day, and they said what was going to happen. And that was that. I mean, obviously I was excited. I thought, at first I was thinking that it would be potentially for the afternoon spot to replace Craig. But then learned that it wasn't the case. But either way, for me, it was nice to be able to move off the overnight and into a prime day part on WFAN.
Very cool.
Overnight's always had its own culture. It's an interesting role that you were in for a number of years.
And honestly, I love the overnight, and I miss being the overnight guy, and I miss the bond with the listeners and callers that time slot provides. It's totally different during the day, which saddens me a little bit because it is special. However, the hours are just, it's a killer schedule with those hours. And also, hitting ninth in the lineup or whatever it may be is not as good as hitting third or fourth. Like, you want to be in a
Right.
prime spot. So I loved it. And I think any spot on WFAN is period, part-time, full-time, but especially as a full-timer, is a great spot. I loved it, and I do miss it, but I'm happy with where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, you said growing up in Ronkonkoma, listening to FAN, you know how the athletes in New York sports obviously live in the hearts and minds of the fans, but somehow New York, even in this podcast era, digital, so media, radio is still just such an important medium for people, and the hosts become somehow tied up with the sports teams and with the players. It's like a fascinating. I don't know if it's like that in other cities. You were in Florida, or at least you did the show in Florida.
Yeah.
I don't know if it has the same juice there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I still think, and the medium has evolved, and it's different. It's not the way that it was with Mike and Chris, where there was one show in town, and it was WFAN. Now there are great podcast options available out there. Social media presence from a lot of different people. You're doing the podcast, all that stuff. Like, there's many different avenues compared to where it was just the fan back then. But it still is WFAN, and it still is the most powerful sports talk station in the world, at least for my money. So I think it's different here in New York, and WFAN probably will always mean something, but it certainly still means something now, even with the landscape changing as far as the sports talk goes.
All right, thanks so much, Sal. Really appreciate your time. This is great fun. I'll send it to you afterward. I know our listeners will really enjoy it, and we really appreciate
Yeah, I
it.
was gonna say, I was on behalf of all our listeners. Like, I know for you, Sal, it's 30, 40 minutes of your time, but and we appreciate it. But from us, no matter what they say about you, whether they love you, whether they think that you're the new Mike Francesa, like, they grow up listening to your voice. Like, grow up the last whatever it's 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Evan Roberts, you have on, like, it means a lot for us. That guys like you come on here. I know you might not think you're some big celebrity here, but in our world where we come from, with our community and especially our league and our, everyone who follows us, we really, really appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
I know, I appreciate that very much, and that's why it's important for me to take the time to do this when you guys ask. I love doing it, and I hope that everybody knows that I'm just trying to do my job and do some sports talk and have some fun. I know that it's not going to be for everybody. Unfortunately, not everybody's going to like you, but you could disagree with my sports opinions. I just hope that at the end of the day, people could realize that I'm just like you, talking sports, having fun, and trying to do the best job that I can to entertain as well.
Thanks so much, Sal.
Thanks, Albert.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you soon. Take care. Thanks for having me.